Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Oh my gosh, we made it past the eclipse. It is December 6th. 2021, and this is the Daily Medicine Transmission. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nourishing and relaxing, rejuvenating weekend, whatever you needed from the weekend, if in fact it was even your weekend. Of course, the idea of the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 is not exactly relevant in a lot of industries anymore in our current society, but still, in the last 2 days, I hope that you got what you needed from them. So we had our eclipse on the 4th, and today is the 6th. So we're going to kind of do just a tiny bit of a review. But it's really about moving forward now. The power of a true inner vision. And when I say inner vision, it truly is inner vision. No one else's vision but our own individually that will actually come together into some sort of collective realization, but it has to come truly from within. And this is not an easy time. So somebody I was speaking to yesterday, actually, a very, very good friend of mine, we were having a conversation and just about actually how difficult this eclipse process is turning out to be. Not that that is unusual at all or something that hasn't been, at least on this channel, talked about for months now about how difficult this time period would actually be. But the experience of it, just like anything else, is something that you don't have until you're in it. Right? You can intellectualize it. You can predict, you can forecast, you can do all kinds of different ways, or you can implement all kinds of different strategies to at least prepare yourself, of course. And there is a lot about the Sagittarius energy that reflects that, actually. And we'll go into that with the astrology today. But in the moment, nothing will ever necessarily take the place of the lived experience in the present moment. And that's really where we want to be all of the time, is in the present moment as much as possible. But there is something to be said for anticipation and an ability to anticipate things that are coming as a result of past action. So this is where we learn from our own history, our own experiences, and how to grow and how to do things better or more efficiently or just differently from our past experiences. So there's something to be said for that. But living in the moment right now with this eclipse door that's absolutely has closed now since the passing of the solar eclipse, and having to essentially live with what has come through that doorway with us, and which will find itself surfacing over the next couple of months. We have to be part of that process now. And the power of a true inner vision is really what's going to get us through, and not even just like getting us through as like survival mode, but to really thrive during this time, which is what we all ultimately want. It is the best case scenario, of course, is to be thriving. And that is honestly, it is the default setting of being a human being, ultimately, without any interference from those who would try to empower or take power for themselves because they don't have access to their own bliss. So, which is, we've been dealing with that as a global community now for a very long time. And this is what is ultimately going to be flushed out of our system in some ways, regardless of what we choose to do about it or not. It's really about how we resonate with the unfolding of this fractal experience that we call life. So, but we were talking, a very good friend of mine and we were talking last night just about kind of how we feel and experiences that we're having. And they've been experiences that have been drawn out for a while. And this person is one of those Virgo people that I know for a fact has been getting hit very hard. It's just certain signs more than others appear to be really catching a lot of the brunt. And I think with Virgo in particular, it's because of Neptune being in their house, in their 7th house, now going direct. But anyway, one of the things this person said was, it's just this whole thing, the eclipse season and even into the solstice. And remember Saturn, well, maybe not remember if you haven't haven't been made aware of it yet. The Saturn is going to square Uranus on Christmas Eve here. So this time period is tearing us to shreds on the inside. That was such an accurate description. So I want to see how everybody is feeling. Whoever is here in the chat, good morning to everyone that is here. And just if you let us know how you're doing, how you are engaging with the eclipse energy just in general. And if you have any particular strategies that you've been employing, because there's just no easy way around a lot of what's happening. Even in the best case scenario, I feel like that we all have something that needs to be brought to the surface and addressed so that it's not coming forward into the next cycle with us. Now, not everybody is going to be able to do that for their own reasons and their own choices and their own contractual obligations at a soul level. But for those of us who identify as a light worker, a starseed, or a wanderer, and intentionally re-entering the matrix as an awakened soul, with the express purpose of being able to guide other people out of it, we still have to live with our own humanity within this process. And it's not very easy. To be perfectly honest, because I'm not here to, I'm not here to give you any intel. I'm not here to tell you what is or isn't going to happen. Yes, astrology is an amazing tool to be able to forecast these nodal points and these fixed points in time that have incredible resonance to them that we can either harmonize with or experience dissonance with. So, but, I'm still a human, despite being a walk-in and despite being a starseed, just like many, many, many of us, I still have, the human experience, which is why we're here in the first place. So to not engage it would be to not do a big part of our mission. But I haven't really felt right since, to be honest, my birthday, which was the first quarter square, or the third quarter square, excuse me, of after that midpoint between the two eclipses. And it's just been, the highs are higher and the lows are incredibly lower. And there is something important about that to acknowledge. And I just want to put it out there, not to necessarily get any feedback for myself, but to just, be vulnerable and to let people know that even as a facilitator and as someone who identifies in a teaching role to a certain extent and definitely in a healing capacity, I mean, that's what I've been doing for many years, multiple decades, is in a healing capacity, that, the healers need healing as well. And we also need to address our own mental and emotional health. And it just I haven't felt really right since that time. And just the depth of some really old stuff that hasn't really surfaced in this way in a really long time. And that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. I mean, it's really easy to just kind of like stuff these things down for the sake of like this toxic positivity of like, if I just think about all the good things, that's all I'm going to get, instead of actually being real with ourselves and acknowledging like, wow, I am feeling depression that I haven't felt in a really long time. Perhaps there are, there's another, many layers here that need to be addressed now that I'm finally in a position to do so. So if you are feeling that and you're feeling the lower lows and even the higher highs, to just keep in mind that that is a function, I believe, of being capable of handling that. And so sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that or be capable of keeping that perspective in the moment when you are really struggling with some serious mental health or emotional health issues, right? Panic attacks have been pretty strong for a lot of people. Very deep depression, sleeplessness has been part of it. Very disrupted sleep. A lot of really a lot of dream state type of stuff. This isn't just me. This is what's being reported to me, what I'm seeing in just kind of cruising social media in general. A lot of sleep disruptions, a lot of dreams that are just very unsettled, a lot of unsettled energy. And we knew this was coming. I mean, this is not a surprise for anybody here that's on this channel, especially since we've been talking about this time frame since March. But now that we're here, it's time to kind of step into the process of our own healing work. And I know that people kind of get sick of hearing that, but it's just what it is. This is why the power of a true inner vision is right here in the front of our awareness right now, because being in the chrysalis is not a comfortable experience by any means, but it's a process that's already now been initiated. It has been for a while. I would say even with the precession of the equinoxes in the late 80s, I think that was really when our 26,000 year cycle came to a close and a new one started. It was pretty clear that humanity was going to take the steps necessary for this ascension process, whatever that means to you. But it's difficult, and we all have our own shadow self to still work with. So how is everyone doing? I'm very curious. It's good to see you too, Barbara. Thank you for so much of your interaction and your friendship. I really mean that. I've really gathered a lot from our interactions together, and I'm so grateful to have met you and know you. I did a workshop with elemental beings for the eclipse, and it was great. I feel an incremental shift slowly kicking in. Old stories seem to be finishing up. The dregs are sometimes the most potent. Oh, absolutely. I think it's like the shit that settled to the bottom, right? That no matter how much it gets stirred up, usually that gunk is just like settled and kind of sticking to the walls. And I feel like that is really, it's like a spiritual enema. It's like a spiritual enema, but and there's nothing comfortable about that process either. And whenever you're detoxing from anything significant, it is an uncomfortable process. So thank you for your feedback, because that really helps put it into perspective. I wake every morning with a song in my head. Today is A Whole New World from Aladdin. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That was one of the first piano pieces I learned how to play as a kid, actually. A whole new world. Doesn't it feel like a whole new world? And it feels so much like things that even we relied upon or considered as a valid perspective or a stable perspective, even those types of things are just falling by the wayside. And it really does come back to what we are dealing with internally for ourselves. So in some ways, personally, I feel that the worst is over. I do feel that too. I don't think that that's going to be the experience in the exoteric, to be perfectly honest. I don't think the worst is over for the larger, and I'm not suggesting any kind of doom or gloom. I really do feel like that in an exoteric, outside, external way, we are going to go down into the depth. So many people that feel like that they have are going through their own personal hell right now. Maybe that's a good thing, so that they are prepared for the larger or more external process of that. But I think that, a lot of people also pre-wave a lot of this stuff too, so that they can be in a position to guide and assist other people when they are going through it in like another wave. So I had a 12-day lunar eclipse ritual and a shorter 1-day eclipse. That's interesting. I wonder what did that ritual entail? I know for me personally, I had initiated a longer process of attunements on a regular basis and fasting and things like that. And I found that really helped as well. So thank you guys for your feedback. and what's just going on in general. Old stories seem to be finishing up. That is what it feels like. So I want to take a moment here. I haven't pulled this book out in a really long time, and it's the original. It's the original book of the Sabian Symbols that was written by Mark Edmund Jones. So he and Elsie Wheeler were the ones in like the very early 20th century who developed the Sabian Symbols. She is as a medium and as a channel, she was the one that intuitively got the pictures, and then Mark Edmund Jones, as the astrologer, extrapolated all of those things into specific archetypal symbols and wrote this book. And the other book that I have that's like my Bible is the Astrological Mandala, that's by Dane Rudhyar, who is probably one of my most that and Jeffrey Wolf Green are probably my the most influence on me astrologically. And actually, Dane Rudhyar and I share our Uranus at the same degree of Scorpio, interestingly enough. So in Uranus and Scorpio, yep, at Zubin Escamali, actually. So, and I know I've talked about that star many times. So I wanted to actually take a moment to read the Sabian symbol for the solar eclipse out of Mark Edmund Jones' book, because I hadn't pulled it out in a really long time, and I decided to pull it out because it'd just been years since I had really gone through the Sabian symbols, because I've been using Dane Rudhyar's Astrological Mandala for so long. And I found that they're two different people, two different time periods, two different conceptualizations. So I've been using them both very recently in the last couple of days, and I find that Mark Edmund Jones's way of interpreting the symbols is just a little bit different, and there's something about the way that he's crafted this particular symbol that I think actually speaks way more to how it all feels. So, a widow's past brought to light. I'm reading here from my tablet. This is a symbol of an individual agony of soul as the property of all. Its public revelation becoming both a personal clearance and an encouragement to others in their own ordeals of the spirit. Wow, that's interesting. Didn't I just say that? And I hadn't actually. It's not like I just read this before I came on here and then I'm just using it. I really did feel like that the encouragement to others was just something as part of the Sagittarian thing. The reverse here is experience at a climax on the side of self-protection in spiritual or inner realization. The reverse symbolism is an emphasis on which I would say is also too where Black Moon Lilith was. Black Moon Lilith being directly opposite this eclipse. If you watched the astrology video from last week, directly opposite the eclipse. I mean, no wonder it feels so incredibly deep and powerful and primal almost. So the reverse symbolism is an emphasis on the better chance ahead rather than on any present or future penalties to be suffered. The key word is rectification. So Dane Rudhyar talks about it as retribution. So you can see a little bit of the subtle differences in the way that the symbols are interpreted by two different astrologers. So when this degree is positive, which is where we want to focus, the degree is a successful employment of past failure as well as prior accomplishment in the effective integration of the personality. And when it's negative, it's a callous repudiation of the self's responsibilities. Well, we're going to talk about the self's responsibilities today because, of course, the moon is in Capricorn. Yeah, I do too. I love that Mark Edmund Jones. Wow. Especially, I mean, and what's interesting is that early astrologers like him, I mean, these are people that are very well educated. They have PhDs. They just prolific writers. You know what I mean? Just like so much content that they have put together, books upon books. I mean, Dane Rudhyar, my gosh, he has written so many books about astrology. And he is both of them, but that I just thought was amazing. So the moon is in Capricorn, isn't it? And we're gonna talk about responsibility, the soul's responsibility, the personal responsibility, because not only is the moon in Capricorn, Venus is in Capricorn, Pluto's in Capricorn. The moon is going to meet both of those planetary bodies today. And when we look at the reading for the intuitive portion of the transmission. We're going to see that there's so much feminine energy right now in terms of receiving and in terms of the stillness and the space within in which to receive. And I think that is where a lot of the disturbance is obviously really happening. If we've been, and when you talk about the moon eclipsing the sun, I mean, that's literally the feminine eclipsing the full expression of the solar energy in that moment. And it's not to say that is a good or bad. It's showing that there needs to be more time. Well, there will be more time for that full expression of what I just read to come forward, because of how we feel and our subconscious and the darker parts of ourselves kind of blocking that, because there's just more that needs to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It needs to percolate, and it needs to kind of like cook in some ways. I keep getting the vision right now of like compost, right? And how it has to cook, and you have to let it needs time and the right temperature and the right environmental factors, so that all the little microorganisms do the job to break it down and turn it into fertilizer, right? And that's what it feels like with this too. And so the eclipse season, of course, is going to get elongated out over the next couple of months. And so that is brought about because what has eclipsed the sun, or that full expression, is our own feeling, and maybe our own past, our own drives, right? All of the things that the lunar energy represents, regardless if you think that the moon is artificial or not, which I do feel like to a certain extent it probably is and was, not as much anymore. I think that it still has an impact on us, obviously. There's no way around that. But what its original intention had been, I think, is up for debate. Maybe not with some people, but I think it's worth talking about. But so it just needs time to unfold. And so there's a lot of this, we're still kind of in this receptive stage with Venus and Capricorn. It's going to be in Capricorn. She's going to be here until February and beyond, right? Because she's going to station retrograde after she meets Pluto, which is very soon, by the way. Very, very soon. She's at 23 to 24 degrees today. So the closer she gets to Pluto, the closer that Persephone is getting to the Dark Lord, right? In which he, on one hand, deceives her and tricks her into coming. On the other hand, she was definitely enticed. I mean, that's kind of the idea, is Pluto and the underworld it's not so much about the darkness as much as it is the power of our transformation that absolutely must come through the acceptance of our own death in some ways. And so every time you see, so for instance, I just watched the Matrix trilogy this weekend. So, Neo had to die, right, at the end of the first movie in order to come back and be upgraded, right? It's the Christ narrative over and over and over again of having to accept the shedding of the mortal coil, or the acceptance of that part of ourselves in order to allow in the transformation or the metamorphosis. And so Venus, as the goddess of love and value and harmony and beauty, especially in Capricorn, though, this responsibility and really wisdom and a sense of, it's like coming into the crone phase, right? That, she's still enticed, but she's also not very naive at this point either. She knows what she's doing. And in fact, it's kind of like as she gets closer to Pluto and meets Pluto and even passes Pluto, she, in fact, is going to go back into her own process of eventually rebirth, right? But it's in this very mature way that, as we look through and go through the reading today, there's so much feminine energy throughout the whole thing, other than kind of the outcome that we're being led to. So even in that space, I mean, that's where it's difficult, right? In terms of it's really easy to act on things. It's really easy to express and to act and to outwardly, focus on the external and with all of the Mars energy, and Mercury even in Sagittarius as well. I mean, there's a lot of potential to expel, right? And to go outward and to be focused outward. And I think it's even more of a challenge to hold your stillness in the face of massive metamorphosis and change. And thankfully, Venus in Capricorn is, like I said, is just so much more mature and wise, and she knows what it takes to get shit done. And so she does it, and she encourages others to do the same thing. But I think it's very difficult to hold the still in the face of everything swirling around you and changing. Regardless of what's changing for you, though, it's pretty clear that the door has shut and it is now coming with us into the next phase regardless. And it will make its way up to the surface. It absolutely will. And maybe in some ways we need to have that part of us block it. And that's what is, encouraged by the eclipse on some level is letting our feelings, letting it sit within us, letting that part of ourselves that's not conscious or active or external to process this information too. So anyway, let's get on with it. Yes. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to bring up the reading. We're going to do some tone here to get prepared, and we will move forward. So, and you'll see what I mean with all of the feminine energy, because we have the Nine of Discs, we have that Princess of Wands again. So, I mean, even in the best case scenario, I still feel like there's a lot of resistance somewhere. The Oracle is reversed, the Queen of Forces is reversed, even Archangel Raphael down here is reversed. But we do have our Prince of Cups that's about to take a deep dive. And I think that many people are being led to, or leading themselves on some level to go much deeper than they've ever been before. And I think we all have to do this, whether we like it or not. So let's take a moment here to kind of ground ourselves. I'm going to get the bowl ready. So we want to make sure that we're seated, either in our seat, on the ground, or standing, whatever position laying down, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever position you find yourself in, that we are allowing ourselves to connect into the ground and going down beneath the ground, letting our energetic body just kind of release into the ground, under the surface, meeting that grid structure and that grid network of the planet underneath the surface, having our Earth Star Chakra connect to that place. And then deep breath in. And release. All right. Whew. Feel like I need to do that seriously, like every 5 minutes in my life right now. So let's start here. Here's our first Venus card, the Nine of Discs, Venus in Virgo, Venus in the second decan of Virgo. So we don't really have any Virgo energy necessarily in the chart right now, but we do have its opposition, which is Neptune stationing direct. And Pallas Athena is also in Pisces as well. And as some of us may find, I know I'm getting ahead of myself with the astrology, but some of us may find that we feel like we are being tested. And part of that is a strategy of initiation, right? That if you want to enter into this stream of consciousness that is fully experiential without completely losing yourself, there does need to be some level of initiation or a test. And it's a test by those who want you there, right? By your own guides, possibly, however you conceptualize that. It is meant to make sure that you're up to the task. So with Pallas Athena, the goddess of strategy and wisdom, she is sitting in this place in Pisces right now. And then, of course, Neptune going direct. And, we talked about this, and the fog of war and the fog of all consciousness in general is getting a lot thicker. And you may notice all kinds of stuff just kind of disappearing, right? And they're not disappearing. It's just because our vision is getting way, way more cloudy again. But at the same time, if we're prepared for this and we accept the strategy and align with the wisdom that has to do with the initiation process, however that's coming about for you and where you're finding that in your chart, for instance, there's a guardianship. I feel like that on many levels, there's a guardianship. Anyway, so our causal factor here, the 9 of discs, is gain, right? Venus and Virgo. And so we have 3 up here, 3 down here, 3 here. This is culmination. This is settling down comfortably and gathering in all the fruits of one's labor and feeling fully satisfied. Now, this could be something that had been felt beforehand, like further into the history or the past. This could be something that fully satisfied, but maybe not. It's just interesting how the energy shifts very quickly. And so even with this energy expressing itself upright, I mean, it just depends on what it is you've gathered in and settled into. Now, Venus, again, in an earth sign is not exactly a bad thing, because this is home territory in Taurus for her, and she's in Capricorn. And so I think there's a recognition of what we have actually like gathered in so far, and feeling pretty at least comfortable and stable with it, right? That we have done the work, right? Virgo is about doing the actual work itself, the day in, day out work. And so there is a comfortability or a comfortableness with that, and settled into it, coming into this moment. And we gather in all of the resources, and that's part of the work too, is the gathering in of the resources. It says fully satisfied, and I think that is accurate, because satisfaction does imply then that there is a new cycle about to start, because we don't stay in stasis hardly at all for very long. And so even in full satisfaction of our material comfort, our material needs, gathering in the fruits of our labor in full satisfaction, it does imply that the cycle might be reaching culmination, but that there will be, in fact, beginning of a new cycle that comes with this satisfaction. So even, and as Barbara had said earlier, that the worst is over, I do feel like this kind of mentality goes along with this, in the sense that we've seen everything that we have done, we've pulled it into us, and we can actually account for it in a very material way, in some way, either financial resources, energetic resources, any type of resource that we have put work into and valued putting work into is now fully satisfied. So this is our causal factor coming into the moment here, is settled. And whether or not this is a good thing for us, a bad thing, whether we're fully what we're fully satisfied with, I think is less important than the fact that we are fully satisfied with what we have gathered so far. Because now where we're at in this present moment here, and not everybody's going to, if this does not resonate with you, it's okay. Not everybody's in the same place about everything, but this is like a collective snapshot. is the Princess of Wands. We have seen her many, many times this season in particular, and as a reversal especially. So sometimes she's upright and sometimes she's reversed, and today she's in reverse. And so just a reminder of this card, this is Venus in the fire signs, right? Which is not where she is right now. She had been when she was in Sagittarius, but she is definitely not in a fire sign right now. So when this card is reversed, I mean, she's at her worst, right? This is about being self-indulgent and theatrical and unable to feel real compassion, right? This is about being arrogant and greedy and faithless, right? Faithless seems to be a big something that's sticking out for me, at least in the reading of this particular energy. So this is the Princess of Wands at her worst, and unable to feel real compassion and to sink into pure greed and cruelty. And it's because Venus, as an archetypal representation, again, she's about what allows us to feel comfortable and secure. She does not like to be uncomfortable, and she will do what she needs to do in order to attract to her what will make her feel comfortable and harmonious and balanced. And it expresses the very real and very human drive to gather from the objective world that which allows us to feel safe and secure in a material way. And so when she is not it's essentially when she's not getting her way, she will kind of degrade herself into these much more dramatic types of expressions that are not very, they're not a good look for her. And even when this card is upright, there's always a note of caution about burning down everything in your wake. But when it's reversed, it's really like very theatrical and very self-indulgent, because she is not only not comfortable, and she's just not getting what she wants. And so she's going to use her all of her power, which is her ability to, she's very lustful and she's very attractive and very passionate. So she uses that to her advantage when she's not getting what she wants. But I think faithless keeps coming out too, because there is a sense of defeatism that is pretty palpable in a lot of ways, not entirely, but this is what happens when the Draco energy is allowed to steer the boat here, and in a way where it's about becoming you can't access your own power in this moment, and so you'll do whatever you need to do. And sometimes people will just degrade down into explosion, right? They'll just degrade down to burning everything in their wake because they can't have it, or they can't feel a sense of joy or optimism. So nobody else is going to either. Now, and this is at the heart, right? This is at the heart. So it might not even be how you actually feel, which is a good indication that, your discernment has to be on point so that you aren't like picking up on other people's stuff and thinking that it's your own. But I would say as you have Venus that had been very satisfied with everything that is gathered, and now coming into this moment of being very not satisfied. In fact, being so unsatisfied that she is acting very inappropriately, to say the least, and unable to feel real compassion. And this is what happens when people don't feel like that they are getting their needs met, either emotionally or spiritually, or they for the sake of they're not transformation is not exactly something that Venus is really interested in, except where she is now in Capricorn. I think that's I'm so glad that she's there, to be perfectly honest. But this is at the heart of the matter. So even if you don't necessarily identify with this, take a larger perspective right now of how this might be something that is a generalized theme in terms of how other people may be responding, especially if you came from a place where you were fully satisfied and all of a sudden you're here, or maybe not all of a sudden, maybe just the result of the eclipse. These things, the agony of the soul coming up and being like, I'm just going to, this is really uncomfortable. So this is the Princess of Wands in the center of this reading. So when we look at where the what's going on in the subconscious, where we're drawing our power from. Here's another feminine aspect, but at least with the Oracle of Delphi, there is a sense that there's two parts to this, no matter how you look at it, which is the perception of the Oracle herself and the interpretation by the priest or the scribe over here. And these are inseparable from each other. Now, when the Oracle is reversed, and number 1, by the way, of the Akashic Tarot, when the Oracle is reversed, I mean, it's a pretty clear indication that we are denying that inner voice. However we get to that place where we interact with or receive, that's a big part of it, receiving, because that's what the Oracle does. She receives the information, she receives the channeling, she receives the message or the impressions, right? And perceives it, right? And she's receiving it. We're denying this inner voice in some way, or people are denying this inner voice. I do feel like that when you're fully satisfied in what you have accomplished so far, what you've gathered in so far, and then you find yourself in this moment being like, kind of thrown off your center possibly, or even, being rendered uncomfortable or challenged in some way. And then you have here at the root of things where you're really sidelining the work that you need to do to sharpen your discernment and your perception, right? You're just kind of closing down from it. And you undermine yourself. We undermine ourselves when we deny this voice. And sometimes this voice tells us things that we don't want to hear, right? And I know all of us can speak to this at some level in some way from our lives, right? I can say for sure last year around this time, I was getting some pretty clear indications of certain things that I was definitely ignoring because it didn't fit with what I had put my energy into consuming up to that point and what I had been led to believe was happening, because it was a lot more comfortable and it satisfied a different part of me to believe these things. And so I denied it, even though it was coming through crystal clear in the astral, right? And I denied it anyway. And so it's important that we become the oracle for our own lives, right? And not relying on others to give us like the intel or tell us what's going on, or giving us insider information, even in a spiritual or energetic sense too. I mean, there's a lot of people that are sharing things that seem to tell us what is or isn't happening. And I'm not suggesting one way or the other if these are accurate or not accurate. I really don't care. My point here is that the real power here is to become the oracle in your own life and to sharpen your discernment and to do the work that you need to do so that you know what that inner voice is versus what is attached to you. And this is becoming a theme that I'm noticing with other people and certain clients as well, that erroneously thinking that this particular inner voice that you thought maybe was like something that had your best interest was really only there because you were feeding it, which is pretty much like a demon, right? In its own way. So I feel like that there's a lot of this going on in general, and the stirrings of it are just now happening, of just like, wait a minute, something isn't right. But if I really entertain this idea, the whole matrix of reality is going to come crashing down. And I think that it's safer in some ways to do this. And we're already feeling the flame in the heart, right? And how uncomfortable it is when that's happening. And I get this sense that there is a denying of the inner voice where we're really rooted right now. And our perception is not exactly where we want it to be. Now, again, generalized. And it's always good to test this for yourself, even if you think your intuition and your inner voice and your discernment is on point. The minute you start to believe or that you don't need to do any work in this realm is exactly when that is an opening in your armor, right? So, but as a whole, This feels like that there is a strong denying and a strong sidelining of this work. It needs to be happening all the time. And I know that that is really frustrating because you're like, when will we ever get to rest? And it's just not going to work that way, right? We have so many layers to unravel as a society that I don't think we'll ever really truly get a chance to just like not have to worry about these types of things. That's just my opinion. So it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your life, doesn't mean that you can't be joyful and optimistic. But this is about true inner vision, right? That's what the whole point of the transmission is about. And you don't get true inner vision if you are not the oracle in your own life. So the Queen of Forces also reversed. Look at all this reversed feminine energy. The Queen of Forces also reversed. So, I mean, I think that fragmented energy, agitation, disharmony, misuse of power and influence, this is what we're really seeing. There may be people in our life that are that reference this. We might actually have external people that we view or that we know that are representing the misuse of power and influence, an imbalance in energy, feeling a loss of power, agitation. That's a big one. I definitely feel a lot of agitation in general. So and I know for me personally, I could say, oh, this Queen of Forces reversed. This is how I am seeing myself and experiencing myself. So of course, that's where my focus is right now. Imbalance in energy, like I said, not knowing what to do next. That's a big one too. I've been hearing that from people of just like, yeah, I'm awake now, but now what, you know? And that also can be very disempowering. And when you have this flaming heart at the center, that's just like, I don't know what to do with all of this energy because something got flipped around or I have to address something or it's off. And then you have this other feminine fire type of energy that's also imbalanced in some way. It's kind of it's a powerful situation. And it's important to not let the situation around you, whatever it is for you, take you off center, because that's exactly what it's meant to do. That's exactly what it's meant to do. So again, remember what I talked about with Pallas Athena in Pisces right now, the strategy of initiation. If you can't handle the heat, you got to get out of the kitchen, right? If you can't handle Neptune direct and still be able to keep your center while the the ocean is roaring around you, or every boundary that you've come to rely on is being dissolved, there needs to be something there to let you know that. And I think that's a big part of what's happening as well. So don't let the situation around you take you off center. See it for what it is, acknowledge it, observe it, feel it, honor it, right? It's not like you're supposed to push your feelings away. That's really destructive. We're human beings. We need to feel our feelings. And just because we have feelings doesn't mean that we're creating a crappy world because we wake up one day and we're just like, wow, I really feel this. It's when you start making decisions and taking action based on that as if it's the only reality, that's when it starts to, I think, become problematic. So, but don't let the situation around you take you off center. It could be an actual person in your life. It could be you that is that Queen of Forces reversed. And it's right there in front of us. It's got our attention. So where is this going? Which I think is very interesting. It's the only real masculine in the reading other than Archangel Raphael that's reversed, and we'll get to that. But the Prince of Cups, we're about to take a deep dive using our intellect and our application of our knowledge of ourself and what it means to be in balance. We're about to take a deep dive. That's what it's all leading to. So that is the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, if you want to say it that way. We're about to take a deep dive, and we wouldn't do that if we were still in full satisfaction of what we gathered so far, right? It would be inert. We wouldn't go anywhere. We wouldn't do anything. And the thing about Venus, especially when she's in these earth signs and Taurus, gosh, especially, is that she can be kind of like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm fully satisfied exactly where I'm at and nothing needs to change. Well, sometimes you need to be propelled into change. And I feel like that a lot of what we're experiencing right now is pushing a lot of people into change. And there are a lot of things happening that are bringing that about. in general, or at least setting the stage, right? Setting the stage for it. So, but the Prince of Cups, right? Clever, open. So the Prince is the air, right? It's the air, it's the mental capacities. Cups is the feelings. So we've taken, it's like going from Libra to Scorpio. Libra being the application of our knowledge and the action that leads to the appearance of balance and fairness and justice, right? And making sure that the scales of the system are in fact balanced. And if we need to transfigure ourselves in order to do that, then that is what we do. Or we don't, and then it's unbalanced, right? Or we hide things and then people don't even know. This is about this is about taking the deep dive. So the Prince of Cups as a court card, again, I think this really represents us, each of us, is clever, is open-minded, is very emotional. This individual appears to be introverted a lot and keeps secrets to himself. That's a very Scorpio thing. But the sharp-minded aspect of the prince as the related to the air element makes him choose fairly what to accept in the end, right? It's holding on to that sharp-mindedness and that cleverness and a sense of being open-minded to go into the depth, do the deep dive, and to go and to feel into what actually is, so that you do accept what is fair, and you choose fairly what to accept in the end. So we're about to embark on this deep dive, and there is a lot of compassion and warmth and love here. Remember, Mars is still in Scorpio, by the way, and is going to sextile Pluto, speaking of Scorpio. So these two rulers of Scorpio having this very harmonious but activating type of relationship today is, and that was overnight, really. We'll have to go through the chart and make sure. So ultimately, we're going to be taking our intellectual self and this clever, open-minded, curious aspect into the depths. And so look at the prince, right? He's got the snake in the bucket, right? There is a containment of this, but very close to him. He's got the bird of prey on the, like a falcon or an eagle on the helmet, right? So the transcendent nature of the mind and spirit, and then literally riding this, it doesn't even look like it's anything but swirling energy, just like surrounded by it. And even in the water, it's swirling. So there's this momentum here and this kind of idea of, gathering energy and going in cycles. But look, it's going right into the water. The bird is doing a nosedive, literally. And when we look at where Black Moon Lilith is today, I mean, this is all about the nosedive and is conjunct with Aldebaran. So when we get to the chart, we'll be able to look at that a little bit more closely and see that, we're taking that deep dive, or we're being led to take that deep dive as a result of our insatisfaction or something being in our discernment, something that is disempowering us, and we're going deep in. So when we look at the guidance that's surrounding all of this energy today, we'll see, number one, Archangel Raphael is reversed. And so I got a pretty clear vision of this before I even did the card reading, like early in the meditation this morning. I got a vision of this, so I'm not surprised that it came up in terms of the heart chakra healing and the green orb of healing. And Raphael often comes in the guise of an actual person. So there is like this potential, some sort of miraculous type of healing that can be brought forward, and maybe somebody in the guise of a human is really a guide. That happened to me in my walk-in experience, actually. After it happened, I was pretty messed up, and I was in a foreign country in a public place, and should have gotten more hurt than I did. So strangely enough, and this man who was he was an Israeli national, and he was a trained paramedic and EMT, and he just happened to be at the bar that I ended up having my experience in, and he just swooped me up and walked me, and Seth on one side and this man, I don't even know who he was. I at this point I already know this is who he was. He just swooped in and like walked both of us home, but he like held me all the way to like literally the door of our apartment we were staying at. And I kept trying to be like, no, I'm going to be fine. And he was like, nope. And I really feel like that he was this Archangel Raphael character. So somebody that comes in seemingly unannounced or out of nowhere that provides some sort of healing or some sort of miraculous type of situation here that has to do with healing. So now that it's reversed though in this situation, and again, the panda, this has been a pretty consistent message. Create a sacred space for yourself. I think that we really do, again, need to, our creative seat here, which is our subconscious. This is where creation comes from, our subconscious energy, not just our thoughts, our subconscious energy in our sacral area. We have to make this a sacred space, right? If we allow in distortion, if we allow in distraction, if we allow in, things that are kind of poisonous in some ways, if we allow, this is what takes our discernment out of alignment, is when this area is not considered sacred to us and we abuse it in some way. And there's all kinds of ways that this can happen. And it's very situational and it's very individual and unique to you as a person. And this is why it's important that you are, in fact, the oracle of your own life, so that you understand the messages and the guidance and all of the things that are being presented to you as a result of what you're creating in this, in your essence, right? That then gets projected out onto the screen of this world and then gets reflected back to you. So again, there's something, we have to treat this as sacred. And with Archangel Raphael reversed in this position, it's a real reminder that there is something that needs to be healed, something very specific. And this is part of the eclipse energy. So something is troubling us collectively and each of us in our own way. And we may not even realize that we're not using all of our resources to find a solution. Something is definitely troubling us. And perhaps if we want to invite in this miraculous healing or reunification or whatever it is, we have to create the space for it, right? We have to create a sacred space for that to be available to us. And that way, it also translates to, it's a feedback, it's a feedback loop, right? It translates to a much more clear channel of perception. And that clear channel of perception allows for the resources and the miraculous connections for healing. And these two, I think, are the most impacted by this, the panda, right? The panda, creating a sacred space. And you can't do that when you are consistently bombarding your system with all kinds of different signals. And it doesn't have to be just overtly negative. It can just be false positivity or just false whatever, right? Or information that's being presented to you that's really just there to get something from you. That's something to consider as well. So the sacred space is really, really important to this process. And if you want to really discern things and have clear perception in your own oracle of your own life, it has to be through a clear channel. And I think that there is so much that we don't even realize. This is what I got a big hit about with Archangel Raphael reversed. There's so much that we don't even realize is distorting that perception. It's been none of this is new. It has been in the making for so long. It's like unplugging from the Matrix, literally, right? You don't even know you're in it until you are being unplugged from it and reborn and terrified. This is why the awakening process is actually something that people don't want to go through if they had to choose, because, they do choose, but if you remember in the Matrix, right, what happens? Cypher is like, fuck this, I want to go back. This sucks. And he's a Judas, right? And throws them all under the bus so he can go back into the Matrix and not remember how difficult real freedom actually is. So That's my soapbox on those things. And then when we look at, this is where I think we can really have some, I wouldn't say control, but like in terms of where our attention is right now and how maybe disempowered and fragmented we may feel, or somebody in our life might be pulling that energy out of us too. Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily within us. There's something about indulging our creativity and our imagination that's going to really assist us right now. Make creative energy a priority for yourself, right? Because the thing is that I think really the Eight of Forces, now this comes and goes in different positions a lot. The Eight of Forces comes right before the Queen in this deck, right? It doesn't go up to 10 in the Akashic Tarot. It's based on an octave system of 8 in the Akashic Tarot. So right after the Queen shows up. And so when this is upright, it is the lightning bolt that splits things apart. So when it's upright, the energy of it is much more accessible to us. So it's a time of splitting apart. It's a time of disappointment. It's a time of like this destructive energy that we think is really sudden, but it's not. It's been brewing for a while, has it not? And it's important that we accept the situation as it is, because you don't control where lightning strikes. It just happens. But all of the conditions that have created that situation have been happening and brewing here for a while. So then you get the split or whatever, the lightning bolt. Actually, when we get to the chart, I'm going to share with you, and you can go find this post yourself. The person who manages the Planet Watcher website, if you click on the link at the top that talks about the triple goddess, you get taken to, I believe, that person's Facebook page, and they have a whole post about the eclipse. And this person actually talked about how they felt it very physically, like in their actual spine, and how it like felt like it was being like pulled apart, like it was being like separated, you know, in a the bifurcation of what's happening became so strong for this person that it was manifested in their own physical body and like in their channel of power, which is your spinal cord. So it's very palpable for many people right now. A time of disappointment. 2021 is kind of the year of disappointment, I feel like, and has been suggested and designated by other people as well. And I do feel that this is the year of disappointment. And you could take that many ways: splitting apart, the destructive element of the Tower, all of those things. And this can lead us feeling agitated, disempowered, all of the things, not balanced at all. And there's something very important about indulging in creativity. This is a very Piscean thing. This is where Neptune actually works in our favor right now in terms of how powerful it is in Pisces, now prograde, is it gives us access to this realm. And if we use it in this way through imagination, creativity, unconditional love, and magic, right? Like white magic, good magic, natural law magic. Well, it is all natural law, but it's distorted when you are using natural law in order to siphon power when you don't have access to your own bliss. And that's through these types of practices is where you get that access. It doesn't matter what it is, you know. Excuse me. Singing, dancing, you know, creating physical, you know, visual art, any, you know, music, writing, and anything that allows you to access this realm. You know, maybe it's just purely through meditation. Maybe it's just being out in nature. But there's something about indulging the side of ourselves and expressing it that is really going to assist in what otherwise is a very difficult type of situation. So if you do find yourself struggling, which I do, you know, back and forth, at least I have the perspective at this point in my life to know to not feed it and to be the witness and be like, wow, that's pretty powerful. I wonder what that's all about. Let's indulge more of this artistic expression to help channel this energy. And I think that's a big part of it, is just having an outlet to channel it. So that we don't get caught in feeling disempowered and agitated. So ultimately, I think where we're going, the Prince of Cups is very capable of going into this deep dive. Now, it may be something you keep to yourself, something that is not, you don't share with anybody else. Maybe this is your own internal process that you are going through, and maybe you're just quietly taking inventory of everything, but you'll know when it's time where you end up and what to accept, because you've taken the time to really go into these spaces honestly and authentically, and you've done what you needed to do to get your discernment back in proper working order, and to not let this agitation that is a very normal part of something like getting struck by lightning, for instance, you don't allow it to take you over. And part of that, again, is indulging some sort of imaginative or creative process, artistic process that allows you to express yourself, right? That's not destructive. This is destructive enough. Okay, it's destructive enough without us adding to it, right? And this bitch right here, and I say this for everybody, don't take it like it's derogatory. I'll call you a bitch if I think you're badass, and I'll call you a bitch if I think you're a badass in a negative way. It doesn't matter. But this bitch right here, when she is feeling disempowered, she is going to be kind of like this Princess of Wands, but way more powerful. The Princess of Wands will just wantonly burning things down in her wake. The Queen of Forces, she's a sorceress, and she does not handle feeling disempowered very well. So if she gets struck by lightning or something like that, and you're holding on to this energy, or somebody like that, get the hell away from them or whatever, right? And if you are feeling this, like I am, for instance, find your outlet. Find your outlet that lets you connect to your bliss, because that's really our best, that's our best chance, honestly. But ultimately where it's headed is something, it's not going to be easy, but we are going to take the dive in, and we need to do that. That's what this whole eclipse cycle is really setting us up for. So let's look at today's astrology and see how this can impact us in ways that positive, negative, whatever. It's all about how we approach all of these situations here. So let's see what's going on here. I am most certainly being tested. That's a fact. Emily, why am I not surprised? I mean, and it's not about you individually. It's just because you and I both know why in terms of astrological connections. So I'm definitely being tested too. Absolutely being tested in a way that it's been a long time since I've felt this way. So in some ways I'm like, bring it on. Bring it on. And that Queen of Forces reversed. Oh, I know her. She lives in me. And it's in those moments where we feel it's desperation. That's the word I'm looking for. People feel desperate. They feel disempowered. They are tested, and they're tempted. They're tempted to act in revengeful ways so that they can feel a sense of empowerment. And we have to be very mindful that we don't let that bitch in. Ugh. She has her place, but she can't be driving when she's like that. So anyway, so remember what I said, the Triple Goddess Rewrite. You can click on that and see his post about how he has responded to the eclipse. And I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I'm going to share it on my social media, because there's some things I didn't agree with, certainly. He talked about how Saturn and Jupiter were in more of a conflicting type of relationship, and I have not felt that at all. Even though normally they are in conflict, because Jupiter is expansion and freedom, and Saturn is solidification and form and responsibility. And normally those two would be at odds with each other in some ways. And in mythology, right, it's Jupiter and Zeus is, challenges, and Kronos, or Saturn, right? Because Kronos eats his children. And if you just think about time as the metaphor here, not some sort of evil creature, Titan, but just time, right? Time comes for all, including that which the material world births, right? It comes back around. So it was Zeus and his brother Poseidon that actually were able to come back out. So normally they would be at odds. And when these two came into a conjunction last year at 0 degrees of Aquarius, yes, there was a battle in some ways that was initiated. But I'm not feeling so much the battle with these two right now. In fact, I feel like that because they're so close together, they tend to be in the same houses for people in their own astrology chart. And it feels like that's where their power is. And the tension that normally would be something that you can harness, right? So, but anyway, I'm just explaining to you that, not all astrologers agree, and that doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. We're all reading the language and interpreting it through our own filter system. And that's something you have to realize too about all of this work is even, all of us, right? We all have our own experiences and perspectives and multidimensional, life that is impacting the filter that allows for our perception of reality for each of us. And so we have to take that into account when we're taking in information from other people, right? It's ultimately at the end of the day, we have to then apply it and cross-examine it with our own perception and to make sure that we are doing the work that is necessary. And that third quarter square on the 27th, I think was a big part of that, of a moment, because it was very close to Draco, actually. The moon was very close, within a degree of Alpha Draconis. It was just like, are we able, in the face of really express, or in cross purposes to this, very strong expression of group solidarity, right? And the meaning behind our action for the whole group. Are we able to keep a hold of ourselves as the spinning death trap of our own energy system is just going out of control? And you know what I'm talking about, right? Those merry-go-rounds on a playground where this is like the spinning, they don't really have these anymore. At least I don't think they do. Some places they do. The spinning death trap, right? Where it's just like, kids broken bones and bruises and cuts and concussions and everything else like came off the spinning death trap. But that explains a lot about what happens with Draco, because that's the moment where that makes or breaks you in terms of what you're going to use that Kundalini energy for. And if you can't necessarily handle the full expression of it and the stillness of it at the same time, this is where people go astray. Anyway, it was on the 27th that I feel like that was really brought forward. That square of what are we going to be conscious? Where is our consciousness really focused? Are we only focused? If we're going to exclusively focus on expressing ourselves in, we're all in this together, and it's all about the group, because that's Sagittarius, without actually acknowledging our own energetics in that moment. I think this has a lot to do with where we are right now. At least that's, been my experience. So here is our chart for today. So what we do see here is that right away as the day turned over, at least on the East Coast, the first real transit that we saw was actually the Capricorn moon in a trine to Uranus. So this degree is going to come up many times as Mercury and the Sun especially, and even Venus in her retrograde is going to come back roughly to this area. I'm pretty sure to this degree in her retrograde, and then station direct again. And of course, Mars will also reach this point. Whether or not Uranus is still at the same exact degree, I'll have to go back and check. But this particular degree where the moon is in a trine to Uranus is setting the tone, right? It's this really subtle impression of what it's going to be like as the larger, the more expressive and outwardly focused, the personal planets. But right now with the moon in this trine to Uranus, remember 120 degree angle, it's providing a base, a foundation, something very strongly connected to each other that you don't have to even do anything for them to be locked into place. These two Earth trine, right? And in Capricorn, we start to start to, it's not so much an investigation, but cardinal energy implies that there's movement or momentum. And Capricorn is cardinal earth. It is the unfolding of the matrix of the geometry, the geometric fractal that is our reality, because that's what it is the unfolding of this geometric pattern that makes up our material reality in this universe. And so it is in the process of unfolding. This is when we all contribute to it. This is the action or the momentum that represents the cardinal energy of Earth. But when we're talking about Earth, we're talking about something very palpable, nuts and bolts, right? Actual like institutions, economies, governments, corporations, larger family structures, right? And provides a level of security, because that is in fact the law of nature unfolding and the machinery of nature working, as Carl Sagan had put it. The awesome machinery of nature is working in Capricorn. So in this degree here of this trine with Uranus, that has been really like shaking up the actual physical nature as it is, right? The fixed earth of Taurus. It's been shaking it up to the point where we are constantly getting opportunities to window shop reality, right? Window shop what is our reality. And this is an internalized process during this retrograde right now. And so the moon in Capricorn in this moment in a trine, this earth trine, I think was really important because it set the tone for, are we going to be able to go into the underlying process of nature itself, you know what I mean? And to receive it, right? We're going to receive the information. Like it's like going to a science lecture or a nature lecture or something like that. And we learn something that we would have never learned had we not actually started participating in the process itself. And so this trine here with Uranus is this, as the reality itself is being, disrupted, it's unstable, it's glitching constantly. That's what I feel like. There's so many glitches, and in a way that is like, here, we're gonna pop into this window. And I've talked about this before. It's like window shopping reality right now. And the reason we're able to do that is because Uranus is like turning the channel constantly and being like, oh, here's this. Oh, here's this reality. Oh, did you know you could have this? Oh, did you know you could have this? Oh, did you realize that this was an option, right? And this is, again, it's internalized, and it forces us to individuate. It forces transformation. Uranus in the chart is that trigger of outside of the box thinking. It's revolutionary. So when we're talking about the actual reality here of life, the currency, the objective reality changing and not being very stable, and in fact being like, here, it can go anywhere. And what is it that you actually want? And maybe reconsidering what you actually want. I think that's a big part of it too. But this moon in Capricorn in this one moment here, feeling the responsibility, feeling the seriousness, and what it takes to actually get something done in this way, what it takes to actually employ the machinery of nature, requires that we actually kind of investigate and choose to participate in the revealing of these aspects of life. And when we do that, it gives us a better sense of, what it is that we do want to choose in terms of the fixed reality based on a feeling of what's underlying the unfolding of reality in and of itself, right? What do we have to do to contribute to this process? So each of us is kind of going into this place, and it's providing a real strong foundation in terms of what it is that we actually are seeking for ourselves, and maybe not fully coming to decide on. That's the whole point of window shopping, is to see what's out there. But maybe we need to go deeper into what is actually underneath out there so that we have a better idea. And every time something comes past this point, in Capricorn, right? Mercury and then the sun. And then when Venus comes into this point in her retrograde, because this is, and moves direct, this is all going to come back up again. So this is the first kind of real subtle, and probably happened in the dream state, or depending on, where you were at this time, becoming, very subtle awareness. And this is why if you were sleeping, it was probably a lot less subtle, right? Maybe confusing symbolically, but also very, very much right, very much accessible from our subconscious. So next, we see at the same, right after this is when Mars came into that sextile with Pluto. So these two rulers of the Scorpio realm of death and rebirth, of transformation, of destruction and transformation, of ego death, right? Scorpio does talk about the dark night of the soul and ego death, because we have to give up just our own desires when we want to commune and cooperate to create something together. So Mars in a sextile to Pluto in this moment, showing these two very, very powerful energies cooperating with each other, right? There's a reconciliation. And Mars, my gosh, just, really pushing us to act on this realm of what we have discovered, what we've investigated in terms of the power dynamics, and to act swiftly. That's the thing where Mars is right now, is the ability to not only act on this, but to act swiftly and to be at home anywhere, which I think is really is a really important skill to have anyway. Efficient functioning in all life situations, the ability to adjust swiftly to a new situation. Like Mars, you want Mars to be quick on its feet. You want that part of yourself to be able to be adaptable, right? And the reality is the result of each of our individual choices. And if we are at home everywhere, if we are efficient in our functioning in all life situations and adaptable, we will have very strong resourcefulness and finding real opportunity in this moment, right? It's when we're not ambitious. But the thing is with Mars here, we kind of don't have a choice. It's almost like forcing the ambition and forcing the issue of like, no, we have to be resourceful and find the real opportunity. In fact, Mars is just pushing forward in that way. And the real opportunity is, I think, honestly, in the destruction that Pluto represents because of what comes next. And so again, it's not so much that we should necessarily, how do I say this? We don't want to be the agent of our own destruction, right? We don't, and some people do that. And some people will do that, and some people are going to do that because that's the only way they know how, or it's the only way they've known how to actually go through this metamorphosis process, is to be the agent of their own destruction. And that can have really permanent consequences depending on the person. And with Neptune stationed direct now, I mean, like I said, addiction, overdose, suicide, just totally defeatism, martyrdom, all of those things are very strong potentials with Neptune stationing direct because you lose yourself. And escapism too is a big part of it. So I'm not suggesting here that you need to like be the agent of your own destruction in order to actually initiate your own metamorphosis, because Mars really is us acting on our own subjective will and experience. But I think what it is showing is that we have the capacity within our own subjective experience and our impulse to be ourselves and our impulse to be part of something with Mars and Scorpio, that we can have this really incredible resourcefulness and adaptability and apply that to, Pluto in Capricorn, which is just destroying everything that has made up our, the matrix is falling, and Pluto has been, slowly but surely, pulling down all of the code, right? Erasing it all along the way. And in this particular degree, I don't think we have a choice but to be ambitious. It just depends on also too, like how we feel about all of this, how we feel about Pluto in Capricorn and where it's at in our chart, and what other things are going on for us. But this is an incredible opportunity. And again, this was like, first thing this morning. And so, this could really lead to that agitation, no doubt, right? Especially Scorpio involved and Capricorn and Pluto. Mars is really the only overtly masculine in this equation. And everything else is, strongly feminine in everything, even Pluto, because Pluto rules, Scorpio. Pluto or Hades is often characterized as male, but, as the ruler of Scorpio, it's definitely got more of a Kali energy personally. That's how I feel. So Mars is acting on the territory that Pluto's usually in charge of. And so again, can take to be like, listen, I can adapt to anything I know this realm like the back of my hand, right? I can go into the darkness, I can go into the shadow, and I don't have any fear. And in fact, I can adapt no matter what happens down here, no matter what situation, because I'm at home everywhere, even in my own darkness. And I'm not saying that I'm not suggesting that we should, again, you don't want to be the agent of your own destruction necessarily, but if you are capable of being in this realm and seeing you can be at home anywhere, and this is really going to have a big impact on our ability to hold ourselves in the midst of this destruction that Pluto represents. I think that the sextile was really, really important for that today. Now, the moon as well is now going to start coming into some more important connections today. So the first thing is that it's going to actually be in a sextile to Neptune, as we see here. So here's another sextile to Neptune. And we feel, again, it's like, if you've ever done like the relay race in any type of event, right? But if you did track and field, for instance, right? And the 400 meter relay, where everybody does 400 meters, which is a lap around the track, and you pass the baton. And so everybody is, in order to win, everybody's got to be on their game. And it really, you're coming into the last decan of Capricorn now. So it is this mastery level here of what it takes. And it takes a concerted effort. It takes commitment. It takes, and sometimes it takes outer motivation, right? You might be on a team of people and participating in this relay, but it's the competition itself and the interchange between your teammates that really is creating the whole situation. You're not motivated to do better without some sort of opposing force or some sort of competitive process that is bonding the team together. And so we're feeling that, right, about what it takes. And again, I think that sextile to Neptune that is really challenging us in a way that, it's been a really long time since Neptune's been in this particular degree, right? Neptune has an orbit that is, 180 years? I can't remember exactly. These types of details, remember, I have Mercury in Sagittarius. The details are something that I have to work harder at, and I don't often remember them. It's the big picture that I usually am more capable of communicating. But, so in terms of the exact number of years of Neptune's orbit, I'm not going to be able to tell you unless I look it up, but I know it's between 100 and 200 years. So this point here, now that it's moving direct, this is where the rubber meets the road, my friends, in terms of, well, there is no road or there's no rubber because it's Neptune and Pisces. There ain't nothing. It's just full on experience. So, but it's experience in a way that's has us in this very almost naive seeming way, but actually very innocent way and looked over, right? There's a guardianship nature to this of where we're going, the renewal, the freshness, the rebirth, right? All of the hope, all of the potential of what we could be that's about to come back around, but we're not there yet. We're still just feeling into it. And this is, I think, again, this dissolves everything, but the sextile or the potential, the reconciliation of this comes with a very, it might be subtle, but it'll be a strong feeling of what it actually is going to take. We all have to be committed to this process together. And maybe it's having an oppositional force or a competition that provides the resistance or provides the motivation for us as a collective to actually keep going, right? I mean, somebody's running around the track right now, and maybe we're ready to get the baton handed off to us. Maybe we're about to hand off the baton. We're not an island. But it's hard to know the difference between you, me, and everything else when Neptune and Pisces is involved and everything is just totally dissolved down into one stream of consciousness, and you don't know what's up or down or all around, right? There's no real way to determine that except for your mastery level, adeptness in this realm. So, but it does come with like this sense individually, all of us, with what it's going to take. And that we are actually running some sort of relay or whatever. And we have to support each other, right? We can't just leave each other blowing in the wind. I mean, we can, but I wouldn't recommend it. And this is going to give us a sense here of the responsibility we have to not only ourselves, but our teammates, whoever they are. And so that sextile, I think, is really important too, because then the moon is then going to come into conjunction not only with Venus, but then also with Pluto and also sextile Mars. And so the Pluto element of that sextile to Mars is going to become very personal and very powerful. So before we get there, though, let's look at Venus, where Venus is in Capricorn, because she now is entering the convent, so to speak. Venus is representing total commitment to a transcendent goal. And it represents, she as an archetype represents the possibility of pursuing a spiritual ideal. Being aspires and is totally dedicated. And when it's in Capricorn, it is the idea that the society itself sees the value of this and for the individual to pursue this in peace. And so society accepts that another way of life exists, which is the monastic life, which is the spiritual commitment, the transcendent goal. And so life can have no satisfaction for the individual unless, well, I wouldn't say no, but talk about satisfaction. Didn't we talk about Venus and satisfaction? Life can have no satisfaction for the individual unless able to develop and maintain some enduring allegiance to a transcendent goal and overall significance, right? So this is a consecration to this process. And so this is the power of true inner vision. It comes from this place. And so the other side of this is surrendering to our weakness, right? We don't have the commitment. And so Venus wants to be comfortable. And if Venus is not ready to walk over this threshold, if this part of ourselves is not ready to walk across this threshold and consecrate our own life and our value towards this spiritual ideal or this transcendent goal or our awakening or ascension or whatever, if we're, this is where we surrender to our weakness. And so the moon meeting Venus today, by the end of today, is going to bring this right into our personal experience. And then from there, the moon right after that comes into that conjunction with Pluto. So we're going to want to really take this a little seriously in terms of, are we committed? Right? Are we committed to this goal? Are we going to have true inner vision here? Because when the moon meets Pluto by the end of today, all of that deep, powerful, raw, repressed shit that is the dregs that are down at the bottom that we never even know are there because they're just sticking to the wall and to the bottom and we never really get it cleaned out. Oh, it's coming out. It's coming out. Don't you worry. And again, sextile to Mars, right? The moon will meet Pluto, and then sextile Mars, like pretty much right after. So again, it's about the ability to we are adaptable, and we know we're adaptable. And in fact, this is going to be our power of initiation and action with Mars, to be adaptable, to swiftly change, because we're at home in the world, right? It is, we can adapt because all of the natural world is our home, right? And so we can set up camp anywhere and find how that is really an expression or an actualization of who we are. But it's going to be the Pluto aspect that is going to really challenge this. And I think that there's going to be a moment right before that happens, when the moon meets Venus, that it'll be not only about our material value in terms of this commitment, but then we also how we feel about it. And then the moon meets Pluto and all of that shit from the bottom. Or all of the stagnant water that's within us, right? If our sacral area, our seat of creation, right, the waters of our own creation, if they are stagnant, if they are poisoned, if they are not clean or clear in any way, if they're even not even there, right, it's going to be brought up. It's going to be brought up, and maybe we will have to make a swift adjustment very very quickly, because what we discover as a result of this conjunction with Pluto is going to be like, oh damn, I didn't even know that was down there, right? And this happens every month, right? The moon comes around and meets Pluto every single month, and so you'll find around this time of the month that it'll be like, damn, that shit's coming right up to the surface of my feels. It's going to be Mars that's going to be like, yep, that's great, so let's move on to a place where that's not happening, not to avoid it, not at all. Just to be like, I have everything I need to adjust myself, because even in the darkest and even in the most uncomfortable moments, I know that it is here there's something here that can be utilized for my highest good, and that I'm at home everywhere, even in the darkest areas, right? Again, if you can find yourself at home in the darkest corners of yourself, and still acknowledge that as part of who you are, without giving all your power away to that place, then you can apply that and invest that, I think, into something that will be a very potent experience by the end of today. So that's pretty much the astrology for today. And then the one thing I wanted to share is Black Moon Lilith is not on this chart, but she is in conjunction today with Aldebaran, right? Archangel Michael, and taking the nosedive. So remember, the Prince of Cups, taking the nosedive, is very much there. And so and she's retrograde, right? And she was opposite of this eclipse, the solar eclipse, directly. So she's been kind of hovering here around Aldebaran for a couple days. And there is something primal about our ability to challenge gravity, challenge nature, play with danger, and controlled use of our mental powers, and plunge into experiences with complete disregard of consequences. And I'm not saying that we should do that necessarily. I think that the crisis will compel us to plunge into it regardless. It's just that we can see it as an acting in full independence of those things that have been a limitation for other people. So we can reorient ourselves through every issue. And in fact, like I said, with Lilith, it's so primal, it's so deep. And with all this Scorpio Pluto energy connected to each other in the moon today, it's very easy to feel defeatist. But Lilith, if we can just, I feel like that there is something very powerful about this position today, where we can really reorient ourselves. And in fact, we will feel so driven at such a primal level that we may not even realize it. And so we have to be aware of that, I think, as well. And when we talk about challenging gravity, remember, gravity is the weakest of the four universal forces, and gravity only functions as a result of matter. That's all gravity. You don't have any physical matter. There's no gravity, right? That's why time isn't relevant at the same way in outside of 3 dimensions. It's not the same, because gravity is the same way. You need mass and you need space-time in order for gravity to be even relevant. And so in some ways there's this like really deep primal urge to act even outside of that, which is very spiritual. Right? But the downside of this particular placement, especially because she's retrograde, is the defeat. But the defeat only comes when we don't do anything. And some people are going to feel that way. They're going to be paralyzed, ultimately. And some people are going to jump into places without even considering. And that's the other side of Mars in Scorpio, right? Is just like, it's one thing to be adaptable. It's another to be escapist. And that's something that could easily happen as well. It's like, oh shit, I'm getting out of here. When faced with the very strong connection with the moon and Pluto. So I would also caution you not to, all of us, to just like bypass it or just be like, oh, I'm out. You know what I mean? I don't want to deal with this shit, because that's not going to help either. We all have to like actually descend into these spaces and really learn about ourselves, because there's always something to learn, right? Always. There's always something to learn. So I'm going to leave it there. That's plenty to work with for a Monday morning, my friends. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I am actually going to be working on an outro scene that's going to have all the information, so I don't have to say it every time, about bookings and all of the stuff in the description box below. But everything you do need is in the description box below. And if you're interested in a reading, especially energy work right now, I feel like that's very helpful for people. I've had some pretty remarkable experiences lately, doing some more shamanic type of energy work along with the Reiki. So I'm going to be putting together something to offer people at a discount for energy work, because I feel like that this is probably going to be very helpful. Of course, the readings are very helpful as well, and you can always book like a micro reading with the cards. That's an option too. And an intuitive reading always happens with Reiki. I always get intuitive information when I'm giving Reiki. But we can expand on that into a much bigger process if you're interested. So everything you need is in the description box below. Thank you for being here. If you're new here, just consider subscribing, hitting that, and everybody consider hitting the like button, sharing, commenting. It really does make a difference in getting, of course, if you want to support this work financially, you can do so through Subscribestar. It's in the description box below. And that is also really appreciated as well, to keep this work here for people. So I love you guys. Thanks for being here. I really do truly appreciate each and every one of you. So I hope you're having a great day. Take good care of yourself. Be easy on yourself. Be gentle on yourself. But don't be afraid to do the hard work either. And know that if you're having, your feelings are a guide. They really are. And so you don't have to squash them. You don't have to feel guilty about having them. But you don't have to necessarily feed into them as if they are your identity either. So, and sometimes we need the external or objective perspective to see something that we don't see because we're too close to it. And sometimes if you've had infiltration energetically, or you have like ancestral stuff that has come down throughout the generations that is now part of you, sometimes it's hard to see that that's not actually who you are, because it's been clouding your filter for so long that you actually, and this is what happens with people's mental and emotional health. They think that that is who they are because they've had this attachment for so long that has been siphoning and keeping people from actually stepping into their true power. And so much of our society right now, so much of the ways that we interact with each other through social media, so much of the media in general, they are providing all of that filtration system so that we don't come into our own power. So, and that hasn't gone away, right? I mean, it's certainly folding, and that's part of Pluto through Capricorn, but we still have work to do, and I'm here to assist you with that. So you can book through my website if you want, and otherwise, have a great day, guys. Take care of yourselves, like I said, and we will be together tomorrow. Bye.